Marcus Henderson dragged his worn boots through the dusty streets of Broken Creek, Arizona, a forgotten desert town where tumbleweeds outnumbered hope. His weathered face bore the invisible scars of 3 tours overseas, and his faithful German shepherd, Ranger, padded silently beside him. The townspeople crossed the street when they saw them coming, whispering behind cupped hands about the crazy homeless vet who talked to his dog like it was human. Marcus had arrived 6 months ago with nothing but a backpack, his service medals, and Ranger, seeking the solitude that only the harsh Sonoran desert could provide. The local sheriff, Pete Morrison, had made it clear that drifters weren't welcome, especially ones who made the good folks uncomfortable with their 1,000-yard stares and sudden movements when cars backfired. But Marcus had found an abandoned trailer on the outskirts of town, and something about this desolate place called to him, even as the residents made their displeasure known through cold stares and deliberate exclusion. Every morning, Marcus and Ranger walked the same route through town, past Miller's General Store where old-timers gathered to gossip and glare, past the diner where waitress Sarah Chen served everyone except him, and past the school where children pointed and whispered about the strange man with the big dog. Ranger seemed unusually alert during these walks, his ears constantly swiveling, his intelligent brown eyes scanning every shadow and doorway with military precision. The dog's behavior puzzled Marcus because Ranger had always been protective, but lately, something had shifted in the animal's demeanor. He would stop at certain buildings, whine softly, and paw at the ground as if trying to communicate something urgent. Marcus trusted Ranger's instincts implicitly. The dog had saved his life countless times overseas, detecting IEDs before they could explode and alerting him to enemy positions. When locals complained about the mangy mutt bothering their businesses, Marcus would simply nod and move along. But inside, he knew Ranger was trying to tell him something important about this town and its secrets. The rejection from Broken Creek's residents cut deeper than Marcus admitted to himself. At Murphy's bar, construction worker Tom Bradley made loud jokes about shell-shocked soldiers who couldn't tell reality from their nightmares. At the post office, elderly clerk Margaret Winters would lock the door when she saw Marcus approaching, claiming they were closed despite the open sign blazing in the window. Even Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the town's only physician, had refused to treat an infected cut on Marcus's hand, suggesting he move along to somewhere with better facilities for his kind. The cruelest moment came when 8-year-old Lucy Morrison, Sheriff Pete's granddaughter, approached Ranger with outstretched hands, only to be yanked away by her grandmother, who scolded her about dangerous animals belonging to dangerous people. Marcus had served his country with honor, earned 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. But here in this forgotten corner of America, he was just another unwanted vagrant. The townspeople saw his worn clothes and haunted eyes without seeing the hero underneath, and their dismissal ate at his soul like acid on metal. Ranger's behavior grew more agitated as weeks passed, particularly around 3 locations in town: Murphy's Bar, the old mining office that now served as a storage facility, and the Morrison family's sprawling ranch house on Main Street. The German shepherd would growl low in his throat when certain people passed by, especially when construction workers Tom Bradley and his crew drove their loud trucks through town. Marcus noticed that Ranger's protective instincts seemed heightened around Dr. Rodriguez as well, though the dog had never shown aggression toward medical professionals before. Most disturbing was Ranger's reaction to Sheriff Morrison himself. The dog would position himself between Marcus and the lawman, hackles raised, as if sensing a threat that Marcus couldn't perceive. During their evening walks past the Morrison ranch, Ranger would stop at the fence line and stare toward the main house, occasionally letting out a soft whimper that Marcus had learned meant the dog was detecting something hidden or dangerous. The townspeople interpreted Ranger's behavior as proof of his owner's instability, but Marcus knew better than to ignore his 4-legged partner's warnings. Everything changed on a scorching Tuesday afternoon, When Marcus and Ranger were walking past the old Sinclair Mining Company building on the edge of town, Ranger suddenly broke free from Marcus's side and began pawing frantically at a section of disturbed earth near the building's foundation. The dog's behavior was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. Ranger was whining, digging, and looking back at Marcus with urgent brown eyes that seemed to plead for understanding. When Marcus knelt to examine the spot, he noticed the soil was recently turned, unusual in this drought-stricken area where the ground was typically baked hard as concrete. Ranger's digging had exposed what looked like the corner of a plastic tarp, and when Marcus carefully pulled it aside, he glimpsed something that made his blood run cold. Wrapped in the plastic was a human hand wearing a distinctive turquoise ring that Marcus recognized immediately. It belonged to Maria Santos, the young archaeology student who had disappeared 3 weeks earlier while researching the area's mining history for her doctoral thesis. The local authorities had declared her a runaway, claiming she had simply moved on to another research site, but Ranger had just proved otherwise. Marcus's military training kicked in as he carefully covered the evidence and led Ranger away from the scene, his mind racing through the implications of their discovery. Maria Santos had been staying at the Desert Rose Motel and had been asking questions about the old mining operations, specifically about illegal activities that might still be occurring in the abandoned tunnels. Marcus remembered seeing her at Miller's General Store, purchasing supplies and chatting with Dr. Rodriguez about the area's history. The fact that her disappearance had been so quickly dismissed by Sheriff Morrison now took on a sinister significance, especially given Ranger's obvious distrust of the lawman. Marcus knew he had to be careful. As an outsider with no allies in town, he would be the perfect scapegoat if Maria's body was discovered. But he also couldn't ignore what Ranger had found, not when a young woman's life had been cut short and her killer was walking free. The question was whether anyone in Broken Creek could be trusted with this information, or if Marcus and Ranger were completely on their own in seeking justice for Maria Santos. That evening, Marcus sat in his trailer considering his options while Ranger paced restlessly by the door. Going to Sheriff Morrison was out of the question. The dog's instincts had warned against the man from the beginning, and now Marcus suspected those warnings might be related to Maria's disappearance. Dr. Rodriguez seemed like a potential ally, but her earlier refusal to treat Marcus had shaken his confidence in her character. The logical choice was to contact the county sheriff's office or the state police, but Marcus had no cell phone, and the only landline in town was at the sheriff's office. As he wrestled with the dilemma, Ranger suddenly alerted to something outside, his body going rigid as his ears swiveled toward the sound of approaching vehicles. Through his trailer's small window, Marcus could see headlights cutting through the desert darkness. Multiple vehicles moving slowly along the dirt road that led to his temporary home. The engines were running quietly, deliberately, and Marcus's combat instincts recognized the sound of a coordinated approach. Someone had discovered that he and Ranger had found Maria's grave, and they were coming to ensure that secret never left the desert. Marcus quickly gathered his few possessions and checked his service pistol, though he hoped desperately that it wouldn't come to violence. Ranger positioned himself by the trailer's rear window, his training from military service still sharp after all these years. The approaching vehicles stopped about 200 yards away, their occupants clearly planning their approach rather than announcing themselves. Through the darkness, Marcus could make out at least 4 figures moving through the brush, trying to surround his trailer without being detected. One of them was definitely Tom Bradley, his bulky frame unmistakable even in the shadows, and another appeared to be Deputy Jake Collins, Sheriff Morrison's second-in-command. The realization that law enforcement was involved in whatever conspiracy had led to Maria's death sent ice through Marcus's veins. These weren't random criminals. This was a coordinated cover-up involving people with badges and authority, people who could make an inconvenient homeless veteran disappear without anyone asking questions. Marcus whispered a command to Ranger, and the German Shepherd immediately moved to the trailer's back door, ready to execute their escape plan. The attack came without warning, as the trailer's front windows exploded inward under a barrage of gunfire. Marcus and Ranger rolled out the back door just as flames began licking at the trailer's interior, someone having thrown an incendiary device to destroy any evidence of their presence. The desert night erupted in chaos as Marcus low-crawled through the brush with Ranger beside him, both using skills honed in foreign battlefields to evade their pursuers. Shouting voices echoed across the scrubland as Tom Bradley coordinated the search, his voice carrying clearly in the thin desert air. "Find them both," Bradley barked. "The crazy vet and his mutt have seen too much. Sheriff says make it look like an accident. Maybe a propane explosion in that rat trap trailer." Marcus's heart pounded as he realized the extent of the conspiracy. Sheriff Morrison was orchestrating this entire operation, using his authority to cover up Maria's murder and now attempting to eliminate the only witnesses. Ranger pressed close to Marcus's side, the dog's warmth and presence providing comfort, even as bullets whined overhead and their enemies closed in from multiple directions. Marcus and Ranger crawled through the harsh desert scrub for what felt like hours, thorns tearing at their skin and clothing, while their pursuers maintained their methodical search. The terrain worked in their favor. Marcus's military experience in desert combat gave him advantages that his enemies lacked, despite their superior numbers and local knowledge. Ranger seemed to understand the gravity of their situation, moving silently beside Marcus and alerting him to dangers with subtle body language rather than sounds that might give away their position. As dawn approached, they reached a rocky outcropping that offered both concealment and a defensive position. From this vantage point, Marcus could see the smoldering remains of his trailer and the search teams that were still combing the area. Tom Bradley was clearly frustrated, barking orders at Deputy Collins and two other men Marcus didn't recognize. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just about covering up Maria's murder. The involvement of multiple people, including law enforcement, suggested something much larger, probably connected to the old mining operations that Maria had been investigating. Hidden among the rocks, Marcus began to piece together the puzzle that had cost Maria Santos her life. The Sinclair Mining Company had officially ceased operations 15 years ago, but Marcus had noticed unusual activity around the old buildings during his walks through town. Trucks came and went at odd hours, always at night, and always driven by the same crew of men, including Tom Bradley. Dr. Rodriguez had been unusually nervous when Maria asked about the mining history, and now Marcus wondered if the good doctor was involved in whatever illegal operation was running through the abandoned tunnels. Sheriff Morrison's quick dismissal of Maria's disappearance made sense if he was protecting a lucrative criminal enterprise, possibly drug smuggling or illegal mining operations that used the old tunnel system. Ranger had been trying to warn Marcus about these people from the beginning, the dog's supernatural ability to sense evil proving more reliable than any human judgment. As the sun climbed higher, Marcus knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. They needed to get word to outside authorities, but first they had to survive long enough to tell their story. The sound of helicopter rotors in the distance confirmed Marcus's worst fears about the scope of the conspiracy against them. This wasn't a small-town cover-up anymore. Whoever was behind Maria's murder had resources that suggested connections far beyond Broken Creek's borders. Ranger's ears perked up at the mechanical sound, and Marcus could see the dog calculating distances and escape routes with the same tactical awareness that had kept them both alive in combat zones. The helicopter was conducting a grid search, its occupants scanning the desert floor for any sign of the fugitives. Marcus realized that their only chance lay in reaching the old mining tunnels where the helicopter couldn't follow, and where they might find evidence of the operation that had killed Maria. It was a desperate gamble, But staying in the open meant certain death, and Marcus had not survived 3 tours of duty to die in the desert of his own country. He whispered instructions to Ranger, and together they began moving toward the mine entrance, using every bit of cover the harsh landscape provided. The journey to the Sinclair mine took them across 2 miles of brutal desert terrain, with the helicopter making regular sweeps overhead and ground teams converging on their suspected location. Ranger proved invaluable during this deadly game of hide-and-seek, his acute hearing and scent detection allowing him to guide Marcus away from their pursuers time and again. The German Shepherd seemed to possess an uncanny ability to predict where the search teams would look next, leading Marcus along paths that avoided detection while still moving toward their objective. As they approached the mine entrance, Marcus could see fresh tire tracks and equipment that confirmed his suspicions about ongoing illegal operations. The official story claimed the mine was abandoned and sealed, but someone had clearly been using it recently, probably as a staging area for smuggling operations that took advantage of the tunnel system's connection to remote desert locations. The mine entrance was guarded by 2 men Marcus didn't recognize, both armed with military-style weapons that suggested this operation had serious funding behind it. These weren't local criminals. They moved and positioned themselves like professionals, possibly ex-military or mercenaries hired to protect whatever valuable operation was running through the tunnels. Marcus studied their patrol patterns from concealment, noting that they were in radio contact with the search teams and the helicopter crew. Ranger remained perfectly still beside him, the dog's training allowing him to remain motionless for extended periods, while watching for the perfect moment to act. The sun was climbing higher, and Marcus knew that remaining in the open much longer would be fatal. The desert heat was already becoming unbearable, and their water supply was nearly exhausted. The guards changed shifts every 2 hours, providing a brief window when their attention might be divided. Marcus began formulating a plan that would rely on Rangers' combat training and their combined experience in neutralizing sentries, though he prayed it wouldn't come to lethal force. When the opportunity presented itself, Marcus and Ranger moved with the fluid coordination of a team that had operated together in life-and-death situations countless times before. Ranger circled wide to approach the first guard from behind, while Marcus created a distraction that drew the second guard's attention away from his post. The German Shepherd's attack was swift and silent, the dog's training allowing him to subdue the guard without killing him, though the man would certainly require medical attention. Marcus simultaneously neutralized the second guard, using hand-to-hand combat techniques, ensuring both men were unconscious but alive before securing their weapons and radio equipment. The entire operation took less than 90 seconds, demonstrating the lethal efficiency that had made Marcus and Ranger such an effective team overseas. With the entrance secured, they quickly moved into the mine tunnel system, Ranger leading the way with his superior senses, while Marcus covered their rear with one of the captured weapons. Inside the mine, the scope of the illegal operation became immediately apparent. The tunnels had been extensively modified with modern lighting, ventilation systems, and storage facilities that could house massive quantities of contraband. Marcus discovered shipping manifests that revealed a sophisticated drug smuggling operation moving product from Mexico through the tunnel system to distribution points across the Southwest. Dr. Emma Rodriguez's signature appeared on medical supply orders that were clearly being used to process and package narcotics, explaining her nervous behavior around Maria's questions. Sheriff Morrison's name appeared on security schedules, confirming his role as the operation's primary law enforcement protection. The paperwork also revealed that Maria Santos had gotten too close to the truth, asking questions about geological surveys that might have exposed the tunnel modifications. Her murder hadn't been random violence. It had been a calculated decision to protect a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise that corrupted law enforcement and medical professionals alike. Ranger suddenly alerted to approaching danger, his body language indicating multiple contacts moving through the tunnel system toward their location. Marcus quickly gathered the most damning evidence while his four-legged partner positioned himself to watch their escape route. The sound of boots echoing through the tunnels confirmed that their pursuers had discovered the unconscious guards and were now flooding into the mine to eliminate the witnesses. Marcus realized they were trapped. The tunnel system had multiple entrances, but all of them were likely being monitored or blocked by now. Their only chance lay in finding another way out, possibly through the natural cave system that connected to the mine workings. Ranger's superior navigation skills would be crucial in the maze of passages, and Marcus trusted the dog's instincts completely as they began moving deeper into the underground labyrinth. The deeper tunnel system proved to be a nightmare of narrow passages, unstable rock formations, and dead ends that tested both Marcus's combat experience and Ranger's natural instincts. The German Shepherd's ability to detect air currents helped them navigate toward possible exits, but the sound of their pursuers seemed to come from every direction as the criminals spread throughout the underground network. Marcus's military training and underground combat served them well, allowing him to set improvised obstacles and misdirection that slowed their enemies' advance. Ranger proved invaluable in detecting ambush points and alternative routes, his senses far superior to human capabilities in the absolute darkness of the deep tunnels. As they pressed forward, Marcus could hear the distant sound of running water, suggesting a connection to the underground river system that might provide their ultimate escape route. The evidence he carried would mean nothing if they couldn't survive to deliver it to honest authorities outside of Broken Creek. Their breakthrough came when Ranger detected a strong air current flowing from what appeared to be a solid rock wall. Marcus's investigation revealed a concealed opening that led to a natural cave system extending beyond the mine workings. The passage was barely large enough for a man and dog to squeeze through, but it represented their only hope of escaping the net that was closing around them. Ranger went first, his smaller size allowing him to navigate the tight space and scout for dangers on the other side. Marcus followed, scraping his shoulders and back against the rough stone while trying to protect the precious evidence that could expose the entire conspiracy. Behind them, their pursuers had discovered their trail, and Marcus could hear Tom Bradley shouting orders to seal off possible escape routes. The race was now between Marcus and Ranger's determination to reach safety and the criminals' efforts to eliminate them before they could expose the truth about Maria's murder and the extensive corruption in Broken Creek. The natural cave system opened into a vast underground chamber where an underground river flowed toward unknown destinations. Marcus could hear the helicopter circling overhead, its crew probably coordinating with ground teams to block all known exits from the mine area. But this natural waterway represented a route that might not appear on any maps, potentially leading them far from their pursuers' search grid. Ranger tested the water with characteristic caution, his intelligence allowing him to assess the current and depth before committing to crossing. Marcus realized this might be their only chance. Staying in the caves meant eventually being cornered and killed, while following the river offered the possibility of reaching civilization where they could contact federal authorities. The water was shockingly cold and moved with dangerous speed, but both Marcus and Ranger had survived worse conditions during their military service. Together, they entered the underground river, Marcus holding the waterproof evidence bag above his head, while Ranger swam beside him with the powerful strokes that made German Shepherds such capable water rescue dogs. The underground river carried them through a terrifying journey of complete darkness, roaring rapids, and underwater obstacles that tested every survival skill Marcus had ever learned. Ranger proved to be an incredible swimming companion, his natural buoyancy and swimming ability helping to guide Marcus through the treacherous currents when exhaustion threatened to overcome him. Several times, the ceiling dropped so low that they had to swim completely underwater, relying on Ranger's instincts to find air pockets and navigate the submerged passages. Marcus's military training and water survival kept him functional, but it was Ranger's unwavering determination and superior senses that ultimately guided them through the underground maze. After what felt like hours in the freezing water, they finally saw daylight ahead. The river emerging from the cave system into a rocky canyon miles from Broken Creek. Both man and dog were hypothermic and exhausted, but they were alive, and Marcus still carried the evidence that could bring justice for Maria Santos and expose the corruption that had nearly cost them their lives. Emerging from the underground river into the bright desert sunlight, Marcus and Ranger collapsed on the rocky shore, both shivering uncontrollably from hypothermia and exhaustion. Ranger's thick coat was plastered to his body, making him look much smaller than his usual imposing size. But his eyes remained alert and focused on their surroundings. Marcus checked their location, using the sun's position and distinctive rock formations, estimating they had traveled nearly 8 miles underground from the mine entrance. The evidence bag had survived their harrowing journey, its contents still dry and intact, despite the traumatic passage through the underground river system. In the distance, Marcus could hear the faint sound of the helicopter, but it seemed to be searching much closer to Broken Creek, suggesting their escape route had taken them outside the immediate search area. Ranger stood and shook himself dry with characteristic German Shepherd efficiency, then began scanning the canyon walls for possible climbing routes that would take them to higher ground where they could signal for help. The climb out of the canyon tested both Marcus's injured body and Ranger's endurance, but the German Shepherd's mountain climbing instincts proved invaluable in finding the safest route up the steep rock faces. Marcus's military experience in rough terrain helped him follow Ranger's lead, trusting the dog's superior balance and route-finding abilities even when exhaustion made every step a monumental effort. Halfway up the canyon wall, they discovered a shallow cave that provided shelter from the blazing sun and a defensive position where they could rest while watching for pursuers. From this vantage point, Marcus could see for miles across the desert landscape, but more importantly, he could see a distant highway where honest law enforcement might be contacted. Ranger positioned himself at the cave entrance, still alert despite their ordeal, his unwavering loyalty and protective instincts intact even after their brush with death. Marcus knew that without his four-legged partner's incredible capabilities, they would never have survived the underground river or found their way to safety. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus spotted a highway patrol car moving along the distant road, its distinctive markings indicating state rather than local jurisdiction. This was their chance to contact authorities who might not be corrupted by Sheriff Morrison's influence. But reaching the highway would require crossing several miles of open desert where they would be visible to the helicopter if it expanded its search pattern. Ranger seemed to sense Marcus's dilemma, the intelligent dog studying the terrain between their position and the highway with tactical awareness. Marcus decided to wait until evening when the helicopter would be forced to land and ground visibility would be reduced. During their wait, he carefully documented everything they had witnessed, writing detailed notes about the evidence they had recovered and the people involved in the conspiracy. Ranger remained vigilant throughout their rest period, his ears constantly monitoring for sounds of approaching danger, while his nose tested air currents for familiar scents that might indicate their pursuers had followed their trail. When darkness finally fell across the desert, Marcus and Ranger began their final push toward the highway and potential rescue. The German Shepherd's night vision and navigation skills proved crucial in crossing the treacherous terrain without using lights that might attract attention from their enemies. Marcus's military training in night operations helped him move silently across the rocky ground. But it was Ranger's supernatural awareness of their surroundings that kept them safe from both natural dangers and human threats. Several times during their journey, Ranger alerted Marcus to the presence of desert predators, his low growls warning of rattlesnakes and coyotes that could have posed serious threats to injured and exhausted travelers. The dog's protective instincts extended to guiding Marcus around unstable ground and dangerous drops that would have been invisible in the darkness. As they approached the highway, Marcus could see the headlights of occasional vehicles, each one representing a possible connection to the outside world and justice for Maria Santos. Their salvation came in the form of Arizona State Trooper Linda Rodriguez, whose patrol car happened to be parked at a roadside rest area when Marcus and Ranger stumbled out of the desert. The trooper's initial suspicion turned to concern when she saw their condition and heard Marcus's urgent pleas for help in contacting federal authorities. Ranger's calm demeanor and obvious training impressed the experienced officer, who recognized the signs of a genuine military working dog team in distress. Marcus quickly explained their situation while showing Trooper Rodriguez the evidence they had recovered from the mine, his military bearing and detailed knowledge of the conspiracy lending credibility to his incredible story. The trooper's radio crackled with routine traffic, but she immediately switched to an encrypted federal channel to contact FBI agents who specialized in corruption cases involving local law enforcement. Within hours, federal agents were en route to take Marcus and Ranger into protective custody while planning coordinated raids on the criminal operation in Broken Creek. The FBI investigation that followed vindicated everything Marcus and Ranger had discovered during their terrifying ordeal in the desert. Federal agents raided the mine complex and found extensive evidence of the drug smuggling operation, arresting Tom Bradley, Deputy Jake Collins, and 6 other conspirators involved in the criminal enterprise. Dr. Emma Rodriguez was taken into custody at her clinic, where agents discovered she had been using her medical license to obtain supplies for processing narcotics and treating injured criminals. Most shocking of all was Sheriff Pete Morrison's arrest at his family ranch, where investigators found evidence linking him to not only Maria's murder, but also the disappearance of 2 other researchers who had asked too many questions about local mining history. The underground river system that had saved Marcus and Ranger's lives became a crucial piece of evidence, proving how the criminals had been transporting drugs across state lines using routes that avoided traditional law enforcement detection methods. Maria Santos's family finally received the closure they had been seeking since her disappearance, though the pain of losing their brilliant daughter could never be completely healed. Her body was recovered from the shallow grave that Ranger had detected, and forensic evidence confirmed that she had been murdered when she discovered the illegal mining operations during her research. The Santos family expressed profound gratitude to Marcus and Ranger, recognizing that without their courage and determination, Maria's killer would have continued operating with impunity, while other innocent people might have suffered the same fate. Marcus testified at multiple trials, his military bearing and obvious integrity making him a compelling witness against the corrupt officials and criminals who had terrorized Broken Creek for years. Ranger accompanied him to every court appearance, the German Shepherd's presence serving as a powerful reminder of the loyalty and courage that had brought justice to their small desert community. The transformation of Broken Creek following the arrests amazed everyone who witnessed it. With the criminal enterprise dismantled and corrupt officials removed from power, the town began attracting legitimate businesses and honest residents who were no longer afraid of asking questions or challenging authority. Sarah Chen reopened her diner with a warm welcome for everyone, including veterans like Marcus, who had been unfairly ostracized by the previous power structure. Margaret Winters at the post office personally apologized to Marcus for her earlier treatment, explaining that she had been afraid of Sheriff Morrison's retaliation if she showed kindness to someone he had marked as unwelcome. Even little Lucy Morrison, the former sheriff's granddaughter, was now living with her grandmother, who encouraged the child's friendship with Ranger, recognizing that the German Shepherd represented heroism rather than danger. The abandoned trailer where Marcus had been living was replaced with a small but comfortable house donated by grateful townspeople who finally understood what they had almost lost. 6 months after their harrowing adventure, Marcus Henderson found himself serving as Broken Creek's new deputy sheriff under the honest leadership of Sheriff Patricia Williams, a decorated former state trooper who had been appointed to clean up the department's reputation. His military experience and proven integrity made him an ideal candidate for law enforcement, while his partnership with Ranger provided the community with a search and rescue capability they had never possessed before. The German Shepherd had become something of a local celebrity, beloved by school children who now understood that heroes came in many forms, including four-legged ones with unwavering loyalty and supernatural courage. Marcus and Ranger conducted regular safety demonstrations at the elementary school, teaching children about the importance of trusting their instincts and seeking help from honest adults when they encountered danger or injustice. The bond between Marcus and Ranger had been forged in combat zones overseas, strengthened by their shared experience as outcasts in an unwelcoming town, and ultimately proven unbreakable during their fight for survival and justice in the harsh desert landscape. Marcus often reflected on how Ranger's instincts had been trying to warn him about the corruption in Broken Creek from their very first day in town, the dog's supernatural ability to sense evil proving more reliable than any human judgment. Their partnership had evolved from military necessity to genuine companionship, and now to a legacy of service that honored both their shared sacrifice overseas and their commitment to protecting innocent people at home. Every evening, as they walked the same streets where they had once been rejected and scorned, Marcus marveled at how dramatically their lives had changed through courage, determination, and the unbreakable bond between a soldier and his faithful companion. The story of Marcus and Ranger spread throughout Arizona and beyond, inspiring other veterans who felt forgotten by the communities they had served to protect. Veterans organizations invited Marcus to speak at conferences and support groups, where he emphasized that healing often came through service to others rather than isolation and withdrawal from society. Ranger accompanied him to these events, serving as a living example of how loyalty, courage, and determination could overcome any obstacle when channeled toward protecting the innocent and seeking justice for the wronged. Their message resonated particularly strongly with military working dog handlers who understood the unique bond between human and canine partners in life and death situations. Maria Santos's doctoral thesis was posthumously completed using her research notes and the evidence uncovered during the FBI investigation, becoming a landmark study of how criminal enterprises exploit remote locations to avoid law enforcement detection. The University of Arizona established the Maria Santos Memorial Scholarship for students studying criminal justice and archaeology, with Marcus and Ranger serving as honorary co-chairs of the selection committee. Each year, scholarship recipients visited Broken Creek to learn about the importance of asking difficult questions and refusing to accept convenient explanations when evidence suggests otherwise. These young scholars represented hope for a future where truth and justice would prevail over corruption and intimidation. As autumn painted the desert landscape in brilliant colors, Marcus stood outside his small house, watching Ranger play with the neighborhood children who had once been taught to fear them both. The transformation seemed almost magical, but Marcus knew it had been earned through suffering, sacrifice, and the unwavering determination to do what was right, regardless of personal cost. Ranger looked up from his game with the children, meeting Marcus's eyes with the same intelligent gaze that had guided them through their darkest hours, and Marcus felt a deep peace settle over his soul. They had found their place in the world not as outcasts or unwanted drifters, but as protectors and guardians of those who needed someone to stand between them and the forces of evil that sometimes wore badges and uniforms. If you're listening to this story from somewhere in America, where veterans and their service animals need support, please know that communities across our nation are working to ensure no hero is left behind. Share your own story about the faithful companions who have stood by you through difficult times, because these bonds of loyalty and love are what make us strongest when facing life's greatest challenges. Our next story will explore another incredible partnership between human courage and animal devotion, so please subscribe to hear more tales that honor the unbreakable bonds that define our best selves. To all our veterans and their families, thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and your continued commitment to protecting the communities you call home.